A busy week one in office for President Trump. Representatives Brenda Lawrence and Dave Trott of Michigan are here to tell us what should move forward and what should not. And how does the president's agenda affect us here in Detroit? Today is Sunday, January 29, 2017, and this is Flashpoint.
Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. I'm glad you're with us. Well, however you feel about President Trump, he does things in a big way. It is hard to recall a first week in office that reverberated the way this last 8 days has. Executive orders on everything from immigration to the Affordable Care Act, a public feud with the president of Mexico, provocative statements on torture and waterboarding, a top strategist referring to the American press as the opposition party, and a promise to investigate what the president believes was an election marred by illegal and fraudulent voting. That is a very full week, and it doesn't begin to capture all of it. His supporters see a president who finally does exactly as he promised on the campaign trail. His detractors seem dazed at the speed of it all, scrambling to respond to one issue just as three others are surfacing. This week ahead promises more drama. The president has promised we will soon see his nominee for replacing Justice Scalia on the Supreme Court. And as that is where the rubber meets the road in American life, I must imagine next week will be even louder in the arena of public debate than this one has been. Our representatives in Congress may find themselves in odd positions. Democrats have long howled about trade unfairness. Well, they have a president vowing to address that. Republicans, by and large, cringe at the word tariff. And yet that's how President Trump first suggested he might pay for the border wall. Well, this morning, two members of the Michigan delegation on the Capitol will try to sort all that out for us. And between immigration and tariff talk, there is a lot for Detroit to consider, too. We'll have that as well, all today on Flashpoint. Well, let's start this morning by convening a meeting of part of the Michigan delegation on Capitol Hill. Not exactly a quorum, but I don't want to get in trouble with the Open Meetings Act anyway. Good to have with me Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence, Democrat from the 14th District, and Congressman Dave Trott, Republican from the 11th District. Thank you both, especially Congressman Trott. You've had a crazy week with being in Philadelphia for the Republican get-together, so I really appreciate you both being here. And let me start with you. Give me your thumbnail on how you think this first week went.
Well, it was a busy week, that's for sure. We're a week into it, and he signed a number of important executive orders. I think he showed in his press conference on Thursday that he's growing into the position of president. I thought his comments were with Prime Minister May were good, and he's pushing to get his cabinet confirmed, which is going to be an important piece of it, and he's working hard. I guess he gets up early and works late. So
do you feel unity in the party behind him? Because there have been, of course, suspicions from many of, especially those most conservative, who weren't really sure of his conservative credentials through the election. Did you feel unity in Philadelphia?
I did, and I think there's unity in part because he's delivering on what he promised, and he's doing it quickly. So I think people are trusting his word and supporting his actions.
Congresswoman, I don't imagine you've enjoyed this first week as much, but I know that a lot of Donald Trump supporters would say, look, elections have consequences. He's actually doing exactly what he promised he would do through the entire election.
That's exactly what I'm saying. People voted for him saying, well, once he's elected, he's going to change. He has proven and shown in these first few days that he is absolutely who he campaigned as. This has been a week that
it's a good thing, isn't it? In that sense?
The American people in the march that you saw, where all of these women came out, and the concerns that we have about his legacy, his beliefs, it is extremely concerning, because people kept saying, oh, he doesn't really believe that. It's just rhetoric for the campaign. And now, step after step after step, executive order, he is proving that what he said he meant. The thing that's so concerning is his rhetoric, which was very divisive, is now he's trying to put into policy. So that's where the concern is, and it's disheartening.
Let me get to something that I mentioned at the outset, though. Congresswoman, for years, Democrats have talked about trade unfairness and not playing on a level playing field. And that's one of the big parts of what he's tried to address this week. Doesn't that sit well with you?
I will tell you what sits well with me is his commitment to infrastructure, his investment in Americans' infrastructure. We have neglected, kicked it down the road. We haven't funded it. If this president keeps his word on that, That would be one thing that I can stand behind and I would be so grateful for. Look at what's happening in Macomb County. That's a clear example of neglect of investment in our infrastructure. Flint Water, neglect investment in our infrastructure. The roads, our bridges. So if this president follows through on that, that's a good thing.
Congressman, I found myself wondering when we saw the big three CEOs emerge, I thought, and then a few days later, I thought, I wonder if he mentioned that 20% tariff to them at the time during that meeting. And as I mentioned at the outset, the word tariff, import taxes, things like that is not generally what people in your party have wanted to hear.
Right, but that meeting with the big three, I think that's the first time the three of them had been together, ever. And that meeting was followed or preceded by a meeting with union leaders. And what this president has promised and what we should be focused on in Congress is more good jobs in Michigan. And a lot of the things he did in his first week are going to do just that. Some of his positions on trade we're going to sort through and we'll see, but he's a deal maker at heart. So some of the positions he stakes out, you know, there's kind of people that make deals, they like to create a little chaos around the discussion sometimes, and that results in better deals. And I hope that's the case for our country, and I hope it means better jobs for manufacturing in Michigan.
He talked about that in his book before, about his style of negotiating. But I am, let's talk about, because the tariff issue came up vis-a-vis the wall. I tweeted out this week, I wonder if our debate over how we pay for it is circumventing our debate over whether we should have one. A Quinnipiac poll conducted just after the election showed that most Americans, the majority of Americans, don't want a wall. Is that what we should have and what we should do?
Well, I think most Americans want a secure border to the south. And
which may not be the same question, you're right. Yeah.
400,000 people come in illegally a year. So people talk about $15 billion to build this wall. If you calculate that every illegal immigrant somehow is going to cost $20,000 between health care and education and maybe the criminal justice system, if you extrapolate that, it'll take 2 years to pay for the wall. So when people get in arguments about the necessity of a wall, it's really about securing our border. We're not going to build a wall for all 2,000 miles. It's not feasible. We're going to try and secure our southern border. It's never going to be perfectly secure, but really, when you boil it down, do you lock your house at night?
So that's a very off-sided way to look at this. First of all, we cannot find money to invest in fixing our water infrastructure in America, but we can find billions of dollars to build a wall that the rhetoric was that Mexican government would pay for that. If you ask the American taxpayer, do I want to take money, because we're not making new money, you're taking money from something else. So do you really want to take our tax dollars to build a wall that does not guarantee that you're going to stop people from coming into this country? And every single illegal immigrant, that formula of what it costs is not realistic. So now let's take it to the economics of those who are coming over here working in these jobs in America and providing services in America. So we can't use that formula. It's slanted.
Jump in. I know you're eager to there.
Well, you know, I agree with Brenda 100%. We need more money to educate our children, to improve our infrastructure, to deal with our national defense that is in a terrible state of decline. So we need to shore up our finances.
Yes.
And you know, for example, the president signed an executive order this week on sanctuary cities. I'm sure Brenda doesn't agree with that executive order. Don't you think the 500 cities around our country should be expected to follow federal immigration law? So when they arrest and detain an illegal immigrant who's a criminal, they should do something about it instead of turning the person back loose in their community. That's why 62 million people voted for Donald Trump.
But I will tell you, what's needed in America is a comprehensive immigration plan. We have children who are born in this country. They are American citizens. And we are not addressing that. We are not addressing, if you're here on an expired visa, what is the process that we're going to use to ensure that you have a path to citizenship? And we're spending all this energy on a wall. Why don't we, Democrats and Republicans,
have we figured out what to do with these 11 million people who are already here?
Well, the president,
do you feel like you're getting an answer on that?
The president is only talking about deporting serious criminals at the moment, and I think that's what he's going to stay focused on for a while, along with the wall. Once the wall, we better secure the southern border, then I think you'll see Congress and the president work on comprehensive.
But what about the additional agents he wants to use? I'm not opposed to that.
Wants to hire 10,000 agents.
But where's that money coming from?
Well, we need to
That's the discussion. I'm not opposed to that, and there's some other areas. And
I'm
now
curious.
we have a
Speaking about cost, though, I'm curious about
governance.
the ethics of having Mexico pay for it. If I want to build a fence around my yard because I'm tired of who's going through my yard, it seems to me the cost is on me ethically rather than asking my neighbors to pony up.
So the economic relationship with Mexico is a complicated relationship.
Yeah,
so how it all gets paid for is yet to be determined. And I think at the end of the day, President Trump will work with I think they had a conversation a few days ago on the phone after the meeting was canceled, and they'll work through that because it's important for both countries to have a healthy trading relationship.
Let's move on. A couple other things I want to quickly get to. The Affordable Care Act. Are you seeing where we're seeing it being brought back, obviously, but are you seeing anything to replace it?
I'm not seeing anything to replace it. And I will tell you, the Affordable Health Care Act had some problems with it. The push for the Democratic Party throughout the Obama administration was let's work together to fix it. It was never that. The response was always no, repeal it. Now we're repeal and replace. We need.
But you're saying at the outset that it needed improving, correct?
It did.
Okay.
There were some unintended consequences, but the majority of it was absolutely what this country needed. And we needed to fix it. I wish the Republican Party would come up and say, let's fix those things that are not working, and let's keep these people employed and move the country forward. That's what I hope.
Well, the Affordable Care Act has been a failure. And to call it anything other than that is cruel to the American people who are suffering with premiums they can't afford, deductibles that make the insurance of no use to them. And to put it succinctly, I brought a chart.
There's 20 million people who supposedly got insurance through it who didn't have it before. Was it a failure for them? Or is that
well, it's
not really accurate?
we're talking about 4% of the insured population is affected by the Affordable Care Act. That's all we're talking about, 4 or 5 million people. But this is the Affordable Care Act right here. This is the Affordable Care Act. So people wonder why the premiums went up and you lost your doctor and you can't afford your deductible. And in a third of the counties in this country, you only have one choice because all the carriers have left and the co-ops have failed. We need to work on replacing it with a better plan. And here's what's lost in this rhetoric around the repeal and replace.
Yeah.
The repeal is going to go into effect in 2018. The replacement will be rolled out far better than the rollout of the Affordable Care website, which costs $2 billion. And we will actually read what we vote on before we pass it, unlike what Nancy Pelosi said they did in 2010. So that's our plan. Our plan is based on a myriad of solutions that will deliver a better health care solution with more flexibility and gets the federal government out of the way.
At the end of the day, if we achieve that, we've done a good thing.
You'd be fine with that.
But I'm not seeing that leadership from the White House.
In fact, I allowed Congresswoman Lawrence, she spoke earlier about something that she saw was very hopeful out of the week in infrastructure talk. I'm curious from you, what was the most worrisome thing that as a Republican you heard come out of from the President of the White House this past week?
Well, I think the President's growing into his role, and he needs to continue to focus on using rhetoric that is less divisive and brings our country together. It's important that we work together, and Brenda and I have worked together, and we will continue to work together, and we're friends. And at the end of the day, we're just trying to do what's best for our country and for the American people, and we need to constantly remind ourselves of that, whether you voted for the President or not, and the President needs to reinforce that through his message.
We had an interesting week for Governor Snyder in a little bit of pushback on some things. First off, on the immigration plan. He doesn't really want his mayors to have to become, I guess, immigration officials, but he also was pushing back a little bit on Medicare expansion because he feels like that's worked here. Does that register with both of you, I guess, as reps from Michigan?
I know for a fact one of the glitches in the Affordable Health Care Act is those states that refuse to allow their state to participate in the Medicare. So there were some built-in barriers that happened. We are going to have to stay aware of the people. You may say it's only 5%, but they're human beings. It's in the millions of people who are going to lose health care, people who have had amazing success with being able to get the health care they need based on the Affordable Health Care Act. You can't dismiss that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's actually 4.1 million people, and it's incumbent on the Congress to come up with a solution that covers pre-existing conditions and deals with the folks in the 100% to 138% that received health care as a result of the Affordable Care Act. And anything short of that will be a disappointment and a problem for our country.
So this is out of love for my colleague. So then the Affordable Health Care Act was not a disaster. It had some good parts.
Well, it added $1 trillion of taxes. The most alarming statistic that bothers me is the cost for administering a individual health care now, not the cost of providing the medical services, went from $400 to $1,800 a year per covered individual. That's the administrative burden we're talking about.
I appreciate the collegiality we see here, that's for sure. And I know you both have had crazy weeks. Thank you so much for being here. I really am grateful.
Thank you.
We'll take a quick break. Back with more on Flashpoint right after this.